Hanahaki, Alternate Universe, Adrienette, Miraculous Ladybug Fanfiction, Part 4. I feel like I'm in high school again, Marinette laughed when she opened the door to find Adrien with a grin on his face and movies tucked under his arm. He was clad in pajamas, and as was she. Adrien shrugged as he walked into the apartment. I never went to high school, so it's all the same to me, he explained. Marinette laughed a bit, like she didn't already know that. Adrien was so clearly homeschooled, it was actually laughable. Well, normally movie night sleepovers are with a huge group of teenage girls, so, this is only half close, Marinette said, bringing out the popcorn that she had popped ahead of time. Adrien threw a blanket over his head to act as long hair. I'm a teenage girl, see? He said excitedly, green eyes gleaming like all the other times he had been silly and having fun. Marinette laughed and tugged the blanket off of his head. Sure. Settling onto the couch, Marinette swatted all the blankets around her. She and Adrien were sitting close, but not too closely, like to the point where they were acting coupley. What's happening here? Adrien asked when they were 20 minutes in. Marinette had no answer for that. She didn't even know what was happening either. It was a new movie. Kind of. But it was terrible. Next one? She asked. Adrien nodded quickly. Yes, please. Marinette clicked out of the movie and they were scrolling through the different movie selections again. These are all so weird, Marinette laughed. Did Hollywood lose the ability to make good teen movies? What happened to movies like Pretty in Pink and Grease? I brought the actually good classics, Adrien offered, nodding his head towards the small pile of DVDs on the table. Marinette set down the remote to scan through Adrien's pile. Ooh, you have Mean Girls? She said, seeing the cover. Adrien nodded excitedly. We should watch it, he exclaimed. Marinette smiled and nodded. One of the virtues of Adrien being homeschooled all his life was that he never got peer pressured into acting manly or into hiding traits like loving teen movies. Toxic masculinity was not a vocabulary term in Adrien's repertoire. Watch out, please, new meat coming through, Adrien said with the movie. Okay, so clearly he had seen the movie more than once, or twice, or 3 times. Marinette looked at him with mirth. Did you think that high school was like this? She asked without thinking. In a second, her face twisted into horror for asking such an invasive question. Yeah, kind of. Though, I really wanted it to be more like High School Musical. That would have been fun, breaking out into song and dance. I begged my father to let me go after that movie, Adrien admitted. Marinette giggled. Adrien was rather impressionable. She could definitely see him as a teenager practicing in his bedroom a dance number. I do wish that real-life high school had music. It was mostly just stress and people who thought they had already taken on the world. Let me tell you, they were wrong, Marinette said, a certain brunette flashing in her mind. You're really pretty, Regina George said. After a minute of watching the movie, Adrien spoke. See? Even she says it, he exclaimed. Marinette turned to look at him with a puzzled expression. What? Adrien looked at her like she was the one who had blurted out something random. Even Regina says people are pretty, he said flatly, like the sentence made sense. Marinette stuttered. Like literally. Okay. Her face went red, remembering the fateful day a month ago that still made something flutter inside of her. Adrien had yet to tell her that she was pretty out of the blue again, but half of her mind was waiting for it, and the other half was trying to push it out. That's a different situation, Marinette finally managed out once she had processed Adrien's jumping speech. He tilted his head, confused. How so? Katie was reacting the same way you were, Adrien asked. Marinette waved her arms around like a crazy person between them. Well, that's because I'm straight and you're straight and then I am a straight girl and you are a straight guy. Saying I'm pretty in a random conversation is just not common. Marinette nearly squeaked at the end. Adrien still looked confused, though. You know what? Never mind. It's fine. Never mind. By the end of the movie, Marinette had learned a few new things. 1. Adrien was way too good at acting like Regina George. He got the sass and the god complex down to a T, as well as the voice, which went impressively high for a male who wasn't 12. That is so fetch, Marinette said, and giggling, hardly keeping it together. Gretchen, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen, Adrien replied with much better acting skills than her. Marinette turned to him, getting more and more impressed with his theatrics. Someone's about to snatch a scholarship from a theater major, she teased. Adrien shyly smiled back at her. Yeah, acting to a degree was a necessary skill set, Adrien said, flipping into that proper tone at the end. It seemed like he was imitating someone, but Marinette had no idea who it was. Now, the second thing she learned about Adrien was that he knew almost every line to pretty much every movie, and to a terrifying degree. Either he was mouthing along with the characters as they had a huge and long monologue, or he was shouting out lines before they were even said. Do you have a habit of just memorizing movie scripts? Marinette blinked at him. The blonde shrugged. I just have seen these movies a lot, he would say. Marinette turned from the screen and then back to Adrien, who was, speaking every line in time, and exhaled quizzingly. You've seen all of these movies a million times, haven't you? She asked eventually. Adrien nodded in confirmation. High school and public school overall was just a foreign concept to me, and I was intrigued. I've seen most Disney shows too. Honestly, I'm disappointed in the lack of zany and unreal people I've met. I mean, aren't all our teachers supposed to be crazy people who we were weirdly close to that let us do whatever we want? He joked. No, seriously. The first time I walked into a high school, I was shocked by the lack of people just hanging out in the hallways, or that you can't group text the entire school. I learned a lot that day, he sighed with red on his face. Marinette nodded with a polite smile because, her brain was just trying to figure out, how the heck to understand this kid. God, was he barricaded in his house growing up? What kid or person, even homeschooled their entire life, actually thought that the movies were real? What was his childhood like? How sheltered was he to not know anything? When did you have the time to watch all these movies thousands of times over? Didn't you go out with friends? I mean, that's what my friend did during elementary school and college, Adrienette said, thinking of Julika. Adrien looked at her. There was sadness in his eyes, and something like resentment. No, I didn't, he said in a faraway voice. And quite honestly, Marinette did not really know what to say to that. The third thing that she learned was that Adrien was a touchy person, and she was not a fan. Now, she knew by how often that he greeted Nino with a hug, or he would sling an arm across the back of Alia's chair, platonically, of course. He was an affectionate person. That wasn't new news. Marinette already knew that. But did she think that it would translate to Adrien coming dangerously close to cuddling with her during movie night? No, she didn't. At some points in the movie, Adrien's arm went from his side to the back of the couch, and then to Marinette's shoulder. No, she totally did not internally shut down for 2 minutes. You have no proof of that happening. It was a lazy motion, obviously, but that still didn't soothe Marinette's racing heartbeat. If she hadn't stayed so rigid, her head probably would have been on his chest. And, just the thought of that was making her insides go fuzzy. Are you cold? Marinette asked, desperate for a reason to stand up and shake his arm off. Adrien shrugged. I'm fine. If you want, I can go grab a blanket, he said, starting to stand. Marinette quickly shook her head and pushed him down by the shoulders to ignore the blush appearing on her cheeks. Adrien was just, he had really broad and muscular shoulders under that shirt, and she was not expecting that. Don't worry about it. I've got it, she said, and quickly left the living room to grab said blanket and to compose herself. When she came back, she had 2 blankets, one for her and one for Adrien. When she sat down, she kept a distance, making sure that it was far enough to comfortably reach an arm, too far to comfortably reach an arm over. When she settled in, she made sure to breathe. And then all of that just promptly went flying out the window the moment that Adrien decided that they should share the fuzzy blanket she had given him. It's cold anyways, he said, now that he had moved closer to her to spread out the red blanket. Now, he was close enough for their body heat to combine and warm up her toes. Now, he was able to swing his arm around her shoulders and pull her in, because Lord knows what personal space is. Not that Marinette wasn't enjoying the feeling of being in his arms. Rather, it was comfortable for her heart. And, to a level that her mind just did not like. Now, Marinette had lost her breath the moment he sighed contently and leaned his head on hers. Luckily, Adrien was watching the movie and didn't notice Marinette's crazed, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god eyes. She looked up at him. Bad idea. The almost couple-like domestic view was making her inside swirl and squeal like a teenage girl. Okay, not that she was far from it or anything, but point still stands. Eventually, he noticed her eyes on him and looked down with a gentle smile that hit her right in the feels. Like the movie? He asked. The sheer platonicness of that statement nearly made Marinette choke. Yep, Marinette answered nervously. This was not what she had in mind when she offered the movie nights. This was very unexpected. He continued to look down at her with direct eye contact. Oh, wow, how the heck did she get here? A sharp ringing broke through, and immediately Adrien turned back to the screen where the fire alarm was pulled. Evidently, a blaring alarm was going off in Marinette's head too. I never understood this scene, Adrien muttered. Marinette laughed slightly. I'm not surprised. Rather than watching the movie, Marinette looked down to where their hands were under the blanket. They were wringing in a frenzy. Her mind didn't really listen to the movie either. No, it was rather a flashback of all the times Marinette had caught Adrien looking at her, or when he said something along the lines of, you look really pretty today, or that was really cute. How many times had that happened? Upwards of 10 times in the past month? Marinette never tried to keep count, but, apparently her subconscious had different ideas. The limit does not exist, Marinette, Adrien, and Katie said at the same time. He grinned widely at her. Her heart fluttered twice. The fourth thing Marinette learned was that, she had a crush on Adrien. And that it was really bad. We should do this again. I had so much fun, Adrien said, looking so happy that Marinette couldn't do anything but agree to a weekly movie/TV night. Despite what her head was shouting, they made plans for every Saturday. On the inside, Marinette was chastising herself for being such a sap and unable to say no. On the outside, she tried to remain calm. Thanks for tonight. It was so fun, Adrien said when he was leaving. Marinette managed out a, yeah, of course. Without warning, he wrapped her into a very tight hug that stole the air from her lungs. She wasn't sure if it was from the contact from him or the sheer strength he had. See you on Monday, Adrien said softly in her ear. Marinette had to blink 6 times to clear her mind and remember, hey, classes. They were a thing. Yeah, she said with a melted smile. Marinette pulled away from her and walked out the door without a care in the world. Adrien pulled away from her and walked out the door without a care in the world. Marinette closed the door, took a breath, and fell to the floor. The 5th thing that Marinette learned that night was that this was going to end in disaster.